Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us at the main stage. Up next, we have a very interesting panel discussion today, and it's Harnessing the Quantum Horizon, preparing for the strategic leap into the next computing era. So we're ending the day because it's day 2 of Switch, and we're ending the day with the big one, which is all about quantum computing. Once it was a concept of science fiction. Now, quantum is now becoming an industrial reality, driving change across pharma, finance, manufacturing, and more. And in this panel, we have some global leaders who will unpack breakthroughs. They're going to explore real-world applications and share how to harness the technology for early advantage. Please join me to welcome our moderator for this segment. We've got Dr. Christoph Jerzak, Managing Partner of Quantonation. And our speakers for this, we have Dr. Raj Hazra, CEO of Quantinuum. We have with us Mr. Shigeyuki Toya, Associate Officer, General Manager of Corporate Development Division of Mitsui & Co. We've got Mr. Phil Mo, Partner of Main Sequence. And we also have Ms. Tansy Tan, COO of HSBC Singapore Quantum COE. Hello, everyone. Everyone's comfortable. Dr. Christoph, over to you.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be back at Switch this year. We're focusing on quantum, having so many friends here as well. Pleasure to welcome you to this session. I'm Christoph Jerzak. I'm a managing partner at Quantonation. We're an early-stage VC focused on quantum technologies and frontiers physics. We've invested in more than 30 companies, about 300 million under management. And I start to share a few words about what gets me excited, actually, about quantum before we jump into questions with this distinguished panel. Actually, I've been thinking about quantum not only as a technology, but as a symbol of a broader category I know called perpetual 5 years technologies. You know these things, people always tell you it's going to happen. It's going to be in 5 years, and then 5 years later, nothing has happened, and then you start again. These are the deep physics frontier technologies that are impacting actually our world now. And we can think about robotics, quantum, fusion, new materials, and it's happening now. It's really important. What we've learned in our case with our investment is that being 5 years away isn't a failure, actually. It's a structural feature of how breakthrough physics evolves. And quantum is part of that. We are now reaching an inflection point. We're reaching a threshold. We're seeing machines in the cloud. We see early applications, discussions about quantum advantage. There's a lot of hype, for sure. I mean, it's part of the story. We need to deal with that. But definitely we're there. And I think when we started investing in 2018, frankly, I could not imagine that we would be there that fast. 2025, for me, is a really important, an important point. Yesterday, we heard DPM Gan tell us that Singapore puts quantum as #1 priority, even before climate tech, before robotics. And that's great. I mean, that's very important. We see that in some other places as well, but quite frankly, not as strongly as in Singapore, and we'll come back to that later. To explore the questions about what's going on, about adoption, about the future, about funding, I'm joined by a remarkable panel, each with their own perspective, obviously. First, let me ask them to maybe start introducing themselves, maybe say a few words about the connection with Singapore and the broader Asia-Pacific region as well, which I think in this context here is quite important. Raj?
Thanks again. I'm Raj Hazra, President and CEO of Quantinuum. My connection with quantum and Singapore dates back a couple of years. Obviously, as you said, this region is ripe with use cases and opportunities for quantum adoption. Singapore has been a leader in quantum, 2 decades of actually putting the infrastructure in and the strategic foresight to invest in. We've signed an MOU to set up a strategic collaboration here and very much looking forward to working here in the region, in Singapore, creating a hub for the world for faster quantum adoption.
Thank you. Shigeyuki?
Yes, my name is Shigeyuki Toya, General Manager of a Corporate Development Division of Mitsui & Company. So my responsibility is really to look for this type of long-term, global, initiatives, working close together with the partners. And then so we are very much excited to be part of this journey. Again, this is a long-term bet, but it's really essential for everyone's life in looking forward. So we are very much excited to be part of it.
Thank you. Phil?
Hey everyone, I'm Phil. I'm a partner at Main Sequence, which is Australia's big deep tech fund. We invest in everything that's got science at the core, and quantum is a big part of that. We've been, in fact, the first company we invested in was a quantum computing company, and now we're one of the biggest quantum investors in the region. In terms of the relationship with this part of the world, I think quantum is a good example of that as well, because in Australia, especially in cities like Sydney and Brisbane, we have a high concentration of quantum research talent, which has accrued over the last 20 years. But we don't really have customers in Australia. We have mining companies, we have some financial institutions, but the customers are up through Singapore and up towards Japan. And for that reason, we talk a lot in Main Sequence about a deep tech growth corridor being between Australia, Singapore, and Japan. And there's a lot. This is the place to be for deep tech.
Thank you. And last but not least, Tansy, I see you brought your fan club, right?
Oh,
Yeah.
hi everyone. My name is Tansy. I'm the COO of HSBC Singapore. In my day job, I look after the running of the bank, providing good product and services to our customer. How do I do that? Besides operational excellence, I look at the latest emerging technology and I look at the risks. And when we talk about risks, cyber, certainly quantum comes into the picture. So for me, I got in touch with quantum about 12 months ago. This is besides the fact that HSBC started quantum in 2022. We have a team based in the UK. At the start of the year, this year, we extended our Center of Excellence to Singapore. So we have the capability in Singapore within HSBC, focusing on quantum research. And when I start soaking in the last 12 months, I realized there's such an active, vibrant community here. Besides, we have got scientists, academia, startups, government agencies. Singapore is just a magnet and almost becoming a global leader when it comes to cyber research and use case.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you all. So first round of introduction, let's get into it. Let's start with Raj. Let's talk about technology, what's going on, what's happening, examples from your company, Quantinuum, maybe a little bit broader as well. So what has been happening, let's say, not even 24 months, I wanted to say that, but there's too much. Maybe in the last 6 months, that is of relevance in the quantum computing ecosystem in particular, or relevance for investors, entrepreneurs, customers. Can you try to make the link a little bit between the announcements and how it impacts people and what they should look for in these announcements, specifically in the case of Quantinuum?
Thanks. Yeah, the last 2 years, certainly, if you look back in retrospect, has been more advances in hardware and software than in the 5 to 7 years put together before then. Why do I say that? Look, over the last, from 2015 onwards, when you really start tracking quantum computing as becoming a potential tool, it was in research. There was research on modalities, there was research on whether the fundamentals of physics can be turned into a machine that's called quantum computing. And people kept focusing on building quantum computers that would work. Well, I think over the last 2 years, what has become abundantly clear is not only can you build these computers, but they have increasing levels of power and performance and stability and reliability. And we, for instance, crossed a very major threshold in 2024 where we had the performance and fidelity of a quantum computer that you could not simulate on classical computers. Why is that important? For the first time, the hope of actually finding something with a quantum advantage was real, because you could not do things anymore just simulating the quantum computer. If you look at the advances we made, particularly leading up to having qubits, managed qubits, quantum error correction, the software stacks to facilitate the developer ecosystem from not having to be PhDs in quantum mechanics and being able to write code like human beings write code with if-then-elses. It's been an amazing journey from taking research tools to now viable prototypes and early prototypes of business solutions. And so now we are seeing that turn of the hardware-software spiral that's been very clear over the last 40 years in classical computing. And today, I would say, very, with a lot of conviction that for the last 5 years or 7 years, the question was if and when. I think we've solved the if problem, and the when is now. And anybody who thinks it's still something worth waiting for or being a fast follower is simply going to find themselves at a disadvantage, independent of where you are. If you're a researcher, you will not have the tools. If you're an enterprise, you will be strategically disadvantaged not having a quantum workforce work on next generation. And if you're an investor, well, you're just paying a heavy price, literally.
Yeah, good transition, by the way. But something I like very much also in what you said is this idea of co-design between the hardware and the software. That people know in the classical world. That's happening also in quantum. I think people should not make such a great distinction between the hardware and software. They have to work together, and I think that's important.
That's right, and that's one of the advantages we have being a full-stack company is we can adapt the hardware to software, we can adapt the software to hardware, and that's really enabled things like quantum error correction, which need a deep knowledge of how the hardware is working to be so effective so quickly.
Yeah, I can agree more. So last year at Switch, I think I would have asked if there was anybody in the assistance who was invested in IonQ stock, Rigetti stock, D-Wave stock, QCI stock, probably, yeah, few hands. Could we do it again? Like who was invested here? Like who wants to invest as considering? Not that many, but still, it's a possibility. Turn to Phil here. So, yeah, there are publicly listed companies in quantum. The valuations have gone through the roof. Probably the total these days must be around $40 billion or something like that for these 4 companies. Not totally expected at this stage, I guess, but how do you reflect about that? You being also a venture capital investor, there are also, as we see ourselves, discrepancies, huge valuation with public markets, much smaller valuation in private markets. Is it positive? Is it a problem? How do we deal with that? And what sign is it? Of what, actually? What's going on?
I think one of the interesting questions about quantum is it a risky investment? And especially when it's quite substantial sums of money these days. Some of the rounds are very large. It's not a cheap kind of company to make. But I think for every single year we've been investing in quantum, no one ever says if, they only say when. And so you know as an investor it's going to happen. So that's the first point. That's very, very, very important. There's not a risk that it's going to just not happen. And then there's the idea that with computing, this is really the next paradigm. It's like being there when, you know, the first semiconductor-powered computers were coming online, and what if you could have a shareholding? You know, what if you had a share in NVIDIA even when it was worth $10 billion? You know, how well you would have done today that it's over $4 trillion. And I think they're the kinds of companies that are emerging. As to the valuations, I think there are now some very, very qualified investors of quantum technology. The people investing in the private markets, at least, are very savvy, have accomplished scientific advisors who look very, very deeply at the technology. And so we are seeing in companies like Quantinuum, PsiQuantum, we're seeing this kind of $10 billion valuation sort of happening now to sort of reflect where we are for these companies that are about to pop. When we started investing, we asked people, it seems like this is commercializing now. What does that actually mean? Does that mean it's going to happen next year, or it might just take quite a lot longer? And people would say to us, could be next year, could be 20 years from now. There was just such a huge margin. But these days people say, like, it's happening, or I don't know if it's happening right now or it's going to happen next year, but it's very definitely happening. And the important point there is it's taking enormous leaps, as we just heard about Quantinuum as well. So the race to utility now is happening very, very quickly. Now, to your point specifically, PsiQuantum, for example, a listed quantum computing company, it's valued at, what did we say? It was about 20, no,
I think IonQ is about 22 billion these
yeah,
days.
22 billion. And so it's got a little bit of public market hubris. You know, not everyone's looking super deeply at it. But you know, it's probably okay because it's still going to be worth a lot more than that, I think, over time. And the private companies will catch up. So I'm not too worried about the difference. And I think strong companies will get the capital they need now as the market shows that it's happening.
Yeah. And on our side, obviously, seeing potential acquirers gives exit opportunities for private companies, maybe component companies, for example, who find an exit would not go IPO directly. So I think it's a sign of maturity of the market as well, to be honest, and I think it's healthy in many ways. Yeah. So switching gear now, Shigeyuki and Tansy, I will have the same question for you, actually. So in the corporate world, how do you approach quantum computing use cases? I mean, we've talked with both panelists before about the time factor. I mean, it's happening now, but yeah, it might take a year more or something, 1 year, 2 years, not 10 years. How do you deal with that, this a little bit uncertainty, but still the fact that you see an impact? And can you give each of you one or two very specific use cases so that the audience understands how quantum is impacting corporates and ultimately end users?
Okay, so maybe I'll start first. So I'd like to touch upon the actual real case we are working on right now. One is, these are already publicly announced, so I can tell you in detail. So one initiative is that they are called QIDO, Quantum Integrated Discovery Orchestrator. So we just launched this initiative this year together with Quantinuum, and the computational chemistry chemical company headquartered in Boston. So basically, this is a really key initiative, hybrid model. Of course, quantum computing is very important, but also looking forward and looking now, it's very important to have a hybrid type of approach. So we work together to come up with this type of structure. So basically, we are expected, these quantum computers are expected to revolutionize the fields of drug discovery, material science, and chemistry. However, challenges are there, such as technological maturity, talent shortages, and some implementation costs remain. So many companies we are talking with are still evaluating the feasibility of adoption. But providing this type of a hybrid platform for clients, they are very much happy to kick off the initiative and trying to integrate the cutting-edge computational chemistry, quantum computing innovations, and AI technologies into their very critical R&D process. So it is happening right now as critical strategic solutions to elevate their R&D process. That is one example from my perspective.
Okay, thank you. Tansy?
It's quite an interesting discussion so far. The reason why HSBC set up Quantum in 2022 is also because we feel that Quantum has walked out of research lab and is turning to commercial use cases, which is the right timing. So HSBC approach to Quantum probably takes place on two-pronged. We look at Quantum from two aspects. The first one is around quantum compute. So this is where, because we are a bank, sometimes we feel that quantum technology, we don't want to wait, we want to start trying, we want to start use cases. And that's where one part of our strategy looks at quantum compute use cases. So this is where we look at quantum-inspired algo running on classical infrastructure. In fact, we have many kind of use cases around such strategy, for example, around portfolio optimization, collateral optimization, and even stretching some of our simulation around Monte Carlo fraud detection. So these are all the common use cases right now that we're running around quantum-inspired algo on the classical stack. We are impatient because we are a bank. We want to make sure that we protect and provide the best product to our customers. On the other hand, when we look at our strategy towards quantum, it's also on the quantum defense. And this is where one example of use case is our partnership with Monetary Authority of Singapore. Last year, MAS itself led a QKD POC within the Singapore ecosystem. This is where HSBC, along with 3 local banks, SPTEL, Spectra, we participated in the POC on testing QKD use cases on top of a Singapore national quantum infrastructure. So the results are out for people who are interested in the use case. The white paper is available on MAS website. So these are really some good examples, and we continue to partner with the ecosystem to look for use cases. But I think it's important to also note that quantum is not the solution to everything. Just like all emerging technology, you need to start with the business problem, you start with the opportunity, and we apply the relevant technology.
Can you say a few words about talent development inside the HSBC? I mean, how you bring in more people maybe to be able to understand quantum and use it, or is it important? I guess so. And what type of program are you developing in-house?
Okay. When it comes to talent development, besides creating the Quantum Center of Excellence, where we're bringing quantum experts right in Singapore, we are also upskilling our HSBC community. In fact, right from the CEO level at the C-suite, we have given them quantum training to make sure they understand the threats as well as the opportunity. I would say that it's not just about new workforce and new skill sets. In fact, if you understand quantum technology, there's also impact on existing staff involved in telco, right down to fiber optics, right down to our cybersecurity team, which all of them are moving along in an upskill journey. Because if you look at the proof of concept that we did with MAS, it is not about quantum scientists taking part only. It's also our telco team, our cybersecurity team, our business team involved in understanding the impact and the use cases. So everybody needs to start to understand quantum technology, really up that curve.
Okay. And Raj, on the technology side, do you think you have, well, what are you doing to facilitate the interface, let's say, between the customers, the end users, and your platform? For some time, people were saying you need a PhD in quantum physics to use these machines. Or how does that work? How do you make them available to, I don't know, HPC engineers as well, etc.? Is it on your side? Are there tools that are being developed by others, by the ecosystem? How does that work?
It's a great question, and there's something to be learned from the classical industry. We believe that the workforce or the talent is divided into certain segments. One is the talent who will continue to build better quantum computers, and that is a shortage area for sure. The second area is those that will write programs for these quantum computers. And there, I think we as a quantum technology firm have a lot to do by providing higher level abstractions. The new software stack that we've just introduced took a major leap forward in saying, you know, it's kind of like when you wrote machine language and assembly language code to when you first got your hands on Pascal or Fortran, you said, oh my God, I finally can write code and not worry about what the machine looks like. It's our job to provide those high-level abstractions, which we now exist in Python-based approaches to writing code versus thinking about circuits or gates. But at the same time, algorithmic and domain knowledge have to meet, right? So if you're writing a piece of, you're creating an algorithm to do something, there are algorithm fundamentals, but there's also domain-specific things you have to roll in. And that is where the challenge is. What we have to do is people who are chemists, for instance, understand how to write quantum algorithms and understand then how to execute them efficiently. Today, it's a very big, vertically integrated. We, as the technology matures, are creating higher level abstractions where you can start to think of a developer ecosystem that has tools to say, is my code correct? Is my code optimized for different architectures? Can I get, syntax checking, semantics checking done? Can I do code sharing? Can I actually deploy this code and run it across a hybrid HPC and a quantum computer? All of those manual things are now getting automated in tools. But the overall area of talent is a critical one. And I think as one of the things about the kind of growth or the financial awakening of quantum, with so much investment going in the valuations, is it's telling the next generation of talent this is a bona fide career area.
Yeah.
It kind of happened to physicists on Wall Street about 40, 30 years ago. It's happening again, and that is an encouraging sign to see. Of course, governments and other folks have a role in accelerating it, but I'm very encouraged by what I'm seeing where people used to say, I have a PhD in quantum mechanics, what could I do other than get an NSF fellowship? Saying, hey, I want to come work for Quantinuum, or I want to go work for IBM, and I want to be in the business of quantum computing.
Yeah. Yeah, in 1996, when I had my PhD, I think there was not much in quantum, actually. There was not much I could do in that field. And today, I mean, it's fantastic to see young students getting a job into startups, in the larger corporates. That's amazing. That's every day something that I realize. I think that's really, really important. Phil, 2 questions for you. One on the talent, to follow on a little bit on that. With respect to the VC jobs, actually, venture capital investors, what should they learn? How should they approach quantum to be maybe more familiar, to invest properly into quantum technology? My second question is also following what Raj said about applications, is are we in a situation like in classical where software will eat the world, or quantum software is already maybe eating the world? How do you see say the split in the future, maybe less focus on hardware, more focus on software? But maybe let's start with the talented VCs. I have a view on that, but I'd like to hear yours as well.
I think as a VC, all you can do is start. You just have to get on the inside of at least one quantum computing company. That's how we began. Yeah, we invested in Q Control. And we just watched what happened in the market. We saw how the technology developed. We saw how customers responded to it as new features came into the software. And we got a feel for it, quite frankly. And then that's a really important companion to having the right scientific advisors around you. And I think the world of quantum, as I signaled before, has got a good group of people that help with due diligence on these things. As for talent, I think there's 2 sides to the talent. There's the how do we get that talent so the industries can grow? But there's also the sort of defensive side as well, which is how bad would it be if quantum pops and so many businesses in the world literally don't know how to think about it, let alone have the teams to actually do the work. And one of the things that, again, Q Control did, which I think was very interesting, is they made a platform called Black Opal, which is this kind of algorithm mindset shifting platform where you're educated to sort of learn what a quantum algorithm is and how it works. And that's being sold now to whole states in India, for example. And so, graduate students are learning how to think about a quantum algorithm. But I think I would be very worried if I was in a chemical company, a sort of advanced materials company, a financial company that did not have people who every day were coming into work trying to figure out what they can do with this thing, because that's a big job that we've got to do today.
Yeah. And on software, just a few words. How do you see the future? Software, hardware, new companies?
Yeah, I mean, I think software, that's where the many multiples more people will be operating in the quantum environment than the hardware people. I mean, the hardware people generally are, people trained in quantum physics to actually build these machines. Whereas software could easily be software people who are just remapping their mind to know what to do with quantum algorithms. So they're going to be quite different things, and it's going to be a whole new revolution of software, and it will eat the world. And I think it's particularly interesting that that's happening at a time when classical software is being commoditized to nothing by large language models. So this maybe is the new high-level software.
Yeah, I think we could talk quite a bit about that, but maybe not here. And Chege Yoke, I wanted to to ask you, you mentioned your collaboration with Quantinuum a little bit earlier. So you made a choice to work with a platform, IONS, which is very sophisticated, it works very well. There are other technologies as well. Should corporates make choices? Should they explore different modalities? How do you approach these different, well, the diversity of platforms that exist today? And how do you bring that to your use cases? And maybe same question for
I
Nancy.
see. Okay, thank you for the question. So I think almost all players involved in quantum revolution will experience a series of strategic pivots, if you will, in coming years ahead, then to come up with a winning formula ultimately. So I think in the meantime, Mitsui emphasizes the importance of creation of ecosystem rather than specific components. Of course, components are important, but at this point and going forward, it's really critical to have a really ecosystem that allows clients, people to really think about how to implement, how to utilize those technology in the form of actual application. So Mitsui as a global conglomerate, so we'd like to be one of the key contributors as a kind of a domain experts as those who are involved in the multiple industries to contribute to those ecosystems. That is our approach.
Yeah. HSBC, so Tensi, what's your view on the diversity of platforms and how to tackle that?
HSBC is a bank, so we are not a hardware company. We don't really choose which area to go. When it comes to our use cases, this is where we want to solve the problem, solve the use case. And the approach for us is really looking at different kind of partnerships. So right now, we are not married to any one particular company, neither any one software or hardware. But I think it's important for us to explore because this area is evolving so fast. And if you take a step back to understand quantum defense itself, the whole reason for quantum defense is because we know quantum computing is going to break the encryption in X years' time, and which is why all organizations are moving towards building their cryptographic inventory, understanding their current asset, and aim to be crypto agility. And by definition of crypto agility, that means you want to be flexible. So whenever the threats move, you adjust accordingly because that area will mature very fast. So in the whole spirit of quantum computing, quantum threat, that's where we shouldn't be fixated in something else. We should be crypto agility and technology agility.
Okay, thank you very much. So last question I wanted to address now is about the regional aspect. Also, what companies, what parties should do in that respect. So I guess it's not a secret that geostrategic tensions have amplified over the last, well, if not years, at least months. So how does that impact access to quantum actually for a place like Singapore? Could be also, I don't know, Malaysia, so Australia, Japan, etc. So many of the platforms, so many of the IP is in the US, in Europe. There are also companies here. We've invested in Dirac, for example, in Australia. Very happy with that. So is there a risk that certain regions here, Asia Pacific, would lose access, for example, from one moment to the other to these technologies? And what should they do to mitigate that risk? And what's your view on that? What's your strategy? Raj?
Well, I think the world will have geopolitics to deal with, and that's complicated by the fact that for quantum, supply chains are very brittle, and so my point being that you don't have to think traditionally about IP only being in the product. You have to think about IP being in software. You have to think about critical IP in the supply chain, and there's much more of a surface for everybody to play on and balance kind of these imbalances that we've traditionally seen in the classical world. So my hope is that collaboration continues, is allowed, is fostered, that supply chain diversity and critical IP in supply chain becomes a focus. There's collaboration for that. And at the end of the day, the establishment of the cloud as a delivery architecture couldn't have come at a better time. So in democratizing quantum, those are the things that I think that will help.
Okay. I think, Phil, Australia is a bit extreme on some of these aspects with respect to quantum in particular. Can you say a few words on a little bit? Yeah, what should we do and what the ecosystem stakeholders maybe should manage to do?
Yeah, I think Australia is very concerned that quantum is a dual-use technology, and because of that, is very careful about export rules around quantum technology, and also foreign investment into quantum technology. And so Australian companies find that a little bit frustrating. It slows things down a lot. It sometimes turns investors away from other markets. And it makes it just a little bit too difficult to actually get things happening. And I think markets that know how to stimulate and open up collaboration and capital coming in, they will do well in the quantum world. And Australia's learning. We're getting faster and faster at it. I think it's a double-edged sword as well, though, because countries want the sovereign capability and they're worried about not having quantum technology, they are investing now into it. And it's one of the reasons we are seeing some of these big valuations. I mean, in Australia, the Australian government invested $1 billion last year into a single company. And that's because they've made no secret about that. That's because they want to have a concentration of well-funded quantum activity in a part of Australia that they can bring everything around that and have that capability. So and we're seeing that all over the world. We're seeing that in the US. We're seeing that in Japan. We're seeing that in Europe for sure. Yeah. So double-edged sword.
Yeah. I think Shigeyuki, I think that Japan has a very strong program. We're seeing very talented researchers, new startups, spin-outs, etc. As a user, does that matter to you? And actually, how do you play in that context?
Yes, Japan is pretty much focused on this type of cutting-edge technology, advanced technology, and then I'm in the camp of a strong believer that APEC and Japan, of course, as part of it, should invest regional supply chain, hardware capabilities, talent pipelines, and cross-border quantum networks, in addition to further strengthen the collaborative structure with the US-EU supply chain system. Actually, building a robust, sustainable supply chain mechanism is the key for further adoption of this technology. So sometimes you need to have strategic redundancy, even in the system of supply chain. So I think that's where APAC countries, including Japan, can play strategic and significant role to create the future, sustainable future.
And Tansy, for HSBC being a global company, I guess, playing in different markets, having a very global view, how do you deal with these constraints, let's say?
If you ask me, the problem or the challenge is not just with quantum. It is technology war in general. It is technology war in general, ranging from your very ancient data, AI, quantum. And if you look at the evolution of more mature technology out there, eventually each and every country will come up with their own regulations, guidelines, and standards. So that's why as an international organization, if you want to operate in that country, you have to follow the guidelines and the standards of what the regulators mention in that country. But ultimately, just like all of us, we carry phones that are Apple and Android. There's bound to be different rooms for different levels of technology as it's mature. And I think it's going to be the same with quantum. I think the key here is, at the end of the day, is about the interoperability. So different technology needs to interoperate in order for us to provide that seamless solution to that customer.
Thank you. So we've covered quite a lot of topics, not everything I had in mind, but still, I think we touched upon a very important, a few important topics here. As said, I think Switch last year was one thing. Switch this year is much better on quantum. I think there's been huge progress. We'll see more even next year, thanks to DPM GAN's announcement. I think there will be a lot of activities in Singapore in quantum. We look forward to contribute to that. Let's thank our panelists for the great discussions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much once again to Tansy, Phil, Toya-san, Dr. Raj, and of course, Dr. Christoph for moderating the segment. Wrapping up the day with very thought-provoking discussion. Thank you. All right, we're going to clear the stage, and in just a few moments, I have the results in my hands. Yes, everybody's been waiting for this. Slingshot 2025, Asia's most exciting deep tech startup competition. And of course, Slingshot would not be a success without the support of our judges, our mentors, our corporate partners, and partner competitions.